6 months after I walked away from my family for choosing my brother over me. My ex-fiancée showed up at my door with a baby bump and a wild story. I asked for a DNA test, and what happened next shattered everything they had left. But to understand last week, you need to know what happened in the 6 months leading up to it. Half a year ago, I walked out of my parents' house on Christmas Day and never went back. There was no dramatic argument and no doors slammed. I simply got up in the middle of dinner, walked out, got into my car, and drove away. By the time they realized I wasn't coming back, I had already blocked every single number. The reason goes back 3 days before Christmas. I had come home early from work because my company gave us half days that week, and I thought it would be nice to surprise Lauren, my fiancée of 2 years, with lunch. We had been planning our wedding for months. The venue was booked, invitations ordered, and everything was moving forward exactly as we had imagined. I even stopped by that sandwich place she loved downtown, the one with the ridiculously expensive bread she was always talking about. I arrived at our apartment building carrying the sandwich bag and my briefcase, rode the elevator to the 3rd floor, and walked down the hallway humming some random song from the radio, completely happy and completely unaware of what I was about to discover. The apartment door was unlocked, which didn't seem unusual since Lauren worked from home most days. I pushed it open, called her name, and got no response. I figured she probably had her headphones on during a call like she sometimes did. I set the sandwiches on the kitchen counter, slipped off my shoes, and headed down the hallway toward the bedroom to let her know I was home. The bedroom door was partly open, and that's when I heard her voice, but she wasn't talking like she was on a call. I froze in the hallway, my mind scrambling to make sense of the sounds I was hearing, trying to come up with some reasonable explanation. Maybe she was watching something, maybe she was on the phone with someone and the timing just sounded strange. I pushed the door open. Lauren was in our bed, and right there with her was Blake, my 26-year-old younger brother. They weren't drunk, they weren't at some party, and it wasn't some hazy mistake. It was the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, and they were both completely sober and fully aware of what they were doing in my bed. The same bed I had helped her choose when we first moved in together, the same place where we had talked about our future. When they saw me, the expressions on their faces weren't guilt. They looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted something important, like I was the inconvenience. Blake hurried to pull the sheets over himself while Lauren's eyes widened, but not out of shame. It was pure panic, the kind that comes from being caught, not the kind that comes from realizing you hurt someone. I didn't yell or throw a punch. At first, I didn't even feel angry. Instead, there was this strange, cold emptiness, like I was watching someone else's life collapse through a window. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, my brain struggling to catch up with what my eyes were seeing and trying to accept that my own brother had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Then I turned around and walked out. "Wait!" Lauren called after me in a panicked voice. "Please, let me explain." I kept walking. "It's not what it looks like," Blake shouted, his voice cracking. At 26 years old, he still sounded like a kid caught stealing. I grabbed my laptop from the living room and my car keys from the hook by the door and left everything else behind. The engagement ring I had spent 6 months saving for, the wedding binder, the photos on the walls, and the entire life I thought I was building. I could hear Lauren scrambling to put her clothes back on and Blake whispering something to her as I reached the front door. She was still calling after me, but by then I was already in my car. I drove straight to a hotel across town, an extended stay America. It wasn't anything special, just a room with a bed and a door that locked. I sat there for nearly 2 hours staring at the wall while my phone kept buzzing with calls from Lauren, then Blake, then Lauren again. Eventually, I turned the phone off. I stayed in that hotel for 2 days, ignoring calls and messages, ordering food to the room, working from my laptop, and pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. On the 3rd day, I had to check out, and I knew I couldn't hide forever. I found a small furnished apartment across town with a month-to-month lease. The landlord asked if I needed to move in immediately. I told him yes and moved in that same afternoon with nothing but my laptop and a change of clothes. Not long after that, the calls from my family started coming in, beginning with my mom. "Honey, we need to talk about what happened," she said in a voicemail, but I didn't answer. Then my dad called. "Son, this is serious. We need to sit down as a family." I ignored that one too. After that, my older sister reached out, saying, "Blake told us everything. Mom's really upset. Can you just call her back?" Blake told them everything. Of course he did. His version of events, the one where he somehow came out looking like the victim. For a moment, I actually thought my family might take my side once they heard what had happened. That they'd be furious on my behalf when they learned Lauren and Blake had been sleeping together in my bed while I was at work. I figured they'd understand how bad the betrayal was. Looking back, that was naive. By the time Christmas arrived, everyone already knew the story. My parents called and insisted we still celebrate Christmas together as a family, saying whatever happened between Lauren and me had nothing to do with family obligations. That should have been my first warning sign. Still, I showed up. I walked into my parents' house carrying a bottle of sparkling cider and absolutely no expectations. I told myself I'd stay for an hour at most, just long enough to show my face and prove I could be the bigger person. Blake was already there when I arrived, sitting comfortably in the living room like he hadn't wrecked my life 3 days earlier. My mom was busy in the kitchen pulling dishes from the oven, and I noticed she'd made his favorite meal, her special lasagna that she usually saved for birthdays and holidays. My dad even clapped him on the shoulder as he passed by, saying, "Good to see you, son." My 2 sisters were chatting with him about his new job at some startup, asking about his new apartment, laughing at his jokes. Everything felt completely normal for them, relaxed and easy, like nothing had happened and I was the one who didn't belong. Lauren wasn't there, which at least was a small relief. A part of me wondered if they had invited her too and she simply had the sense to decline. I set the cider on the kitchen counter, and my mom glanced up with a tight smile. "Oh good, you made it. I was worried you wouldn't come." Not, "I'm glad you're here," or "How are you doing?" Just concerned that I might not show up and keep her perfect family Christmas intact. I lasted about 40 minutes. I got through the appetizers, made polite small talk with my aunts and uncles who had no idea what had happened, and avoided looking at Blake across the table. Then my mom brought up the wedding. She was casually refilling glasses when she turned to me and said, as if it were the most normal question in the world, "So, have you 2 worked things out yet?" The whole table went silent. I looked at her, confused. "What?" I asked. "You and Lauren," she said, like I was pretending not to understand. "Have you talked? Worked through whatever happened?" "No," I said. "We're done." My dad sighed and set his fork down with a small clink that echoed in the quiet room. "You're really going to throw away 2 years over one mistake?" One mistake. Those words just hung there. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for my reaction. I glanced at Blake, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared down at his plate, pushing food around with his fork. "You call that a mistake?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and steady because I refused to give them the satisfaction of watching me lose control. "He's going through a rough time," my mom said defensively, setting the pitcher down and crossing her arms. "He didn't mean for it to happen." I actually laughed at that, though it came out harsh and bitter. "He didn't mean to sleep with my fiancée in my bed in the middle of the day while I was at work?" My older sister quickly jumped in, her face tight with disapproval. "Do you have to be so crude? We're trying to have a nice dinner." "Yeah," my younger sister added. She was sitting beside Blake and even reached over to pat his arm like he needed comfort. "You're kind of making this all about you." I just stared at her, waiting for the joke, certain she couldn't possibly be serious. But she was, completely serious. "Making what about me?" I asked. "The holidays. Family time," she said, gesturing around the table. "You're ruining it by being angry." That was the moment I stood up and grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. My dad tried his calm, reasonable tone. "Son, sit down. Let's talk about this like adults." "We're not talking about anything," I replied. "You've already decided whose side you're on." Blake finally spoke up then. "Come on, man. Don't be like this." I looked at him, really looked at him, my younger brother, the kid I'd helped with homework, lent money to, and covered for whenever he messed up back in high school. And there he was, sitting comfortably in my parents' house eating Christmas dinner while they defended him for wrecking my life. I walked out that night and blocked every single one of them. I cut off every connection completely, every phone number, every social media account, every possible way they could reach me. The next morning, I sent Lauren the engagement ring back through a courier. I didn't include a note because I didn't need to. The message was obvious. Within a week, I moved out of our apartment, packing up only my half of everything late at night when I knew she'd be asleep. I left my key on the counter and walked away without looking back. I found a smaller place across town, a simple one-bedroom that barely had any furniture, but it was mine. I paid the landlord 2 months' rent upfront in cash so there wouldn't be questions or explanations. At work, I told my boss I needed to switch to remote for a while due to a personal emergency. He didn't pry, just told me to take whatever time I needed and come back to the office when I felt ready. The first month was brutal, honestly. Sleep was nearly impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, the same image came back, Blake and Lauren in my bed, and the expressions on their faces when they noticed me standing there. Not guilt, but irritation. Food lost all taste. Everything felt like cardboard, and I survived mostly on protein bars and instant noodles just to keep going. I ended up losing around 15 pounds without even realizing it until my clothes started hanging loose. I threw myself into work, pulling 16-hour days, volunteering for extra projects and taking on tasks nobody else wanted. The goal was simple: stay busy. Because whenever I stopped working, my mind started replaying everything, and that road never led anywhere good. A few coworkers noticed the change and asked if I was okay, but I always brushed it off, saying I was just busy and focused. They were good people though, they knew when to leave it alone. Around the second month, something slowly began to change. One morning I woke up and realized I had slept through the entire night. No nightmares. No sudden wake up at 3 in the morning staring at the ceiling and replaying everything in my head. Just normal sleep. I also started eating actual meals again. Nothing special, but I could taste food and even enjoy it a little, which felt like a small but meaningful win. By the third month, I began feeling somewhat like myself again, not the old version of me, that person was gone, but a tougher, more cautious version that was at least functional. I joined a 24-hour gym where I could go at odd hours without anyone bothering me. At first, I started a couch to 5K running program and could barely finish a mile without stopping, but I stuck with it and slowly built up endurance. By the 4th month, I could run 5 miles without much effort. Around that time, I also picked up woodworking. I found a local community workshop where you could rent space and use their tools, and I began making simple things like cutting boards, shelves, and picture frames. Working with my hands helped more than I expected. Taking rough pieces of wood and shaping them into something clean and useful felt strangely therapeutic, like building something stable out of chaos. By the 6th month, I realized I was actually okay. Maybe not happy, but steady, stable, living a normal life again. I had built a routine that worked for me. Wake up at 5, hit the gym, shower, work until 6, eat a quick dinner, spend a couple of hours at the workshop, come home, watch something on Netflix, sleep, then repeat. There was no drama, no pressure to forgive people who had never apologized, no family guilt trips, no awkward conversations. Just a quiet life that belonged to me. Every now and then, lying in bed at night, I'd wonder if I had gone too far by cutting them all off. Maybe it had been too extreme. Maybe I should have tried harder to fix things. But then I'd remember my dad asking if I was really going to throw away 2 years over one mistake. My sisters telling me I was ruining Christmas, and my mom defending Blake while he sat there saying nothing, not even offering an apology. Whenever I remembered those moments, I knew I had made the right decision. Then last Tuesday, I got home from work around 7, later than usual because I had a deadline that kept me working past normal hours. I heated up leftover Chinese food from the weekend, poured myself a drink, and settled onto the couch to watch the game. Celtics versus Lakers, a matchup I had been looking forward to so I could just relax for a while. That's when someone knocked on my door, sharp and persistent, 3 quick knocks in a row. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't ordered food, and I hadn't invited anyone over. My life had become pretty quiet, and most people didn't even know where I lived. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole, and there she was. Lauren stood in the hallway, clearly pregnant and crying. For a moment, I honestly thought I was imagining things. 6 months without a word. No calls, no messages, no contact at all. And now suddenly she was standing at my door with a baby bump. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, looking through the peephole while she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She kept glancing down the hallway like she was worried someone might see her. She looked about 5 or 6 months pregnant, hard to say exactly, but definitely showing. She was wearing one of those loose maternity tops designed to make pregnancy look graceful. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and there was no makeup on her face. No smudged mascara, no running eyeliner, which was probably intentional because tears look more convincing when there's nothing to smear. After a moment, she knocked again, harder this time. "Please, I know you're home. I saw your car in the parking lot." So she had been watching, waiting for me to get back. This wasn't some random visit. She had planned it. I finally opened the door, but I didn't step aside or invite her in. I just stood in the doorway with my arms crossed, blocking the entrance. "What do you want?" Her lips started trembling. She was good at this, I'll give her that. If I still cared about her, I might have believed it. But I'd spent 6 months learning exactly who she really was, and the trembling lip didn't work on me anymore. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Just for a minute, please." "No," she blinked, clearly not expecting that. "I need to talk to you. It's important." "Then talk." She glanced down the hallway again like she was worried the neighbors might hear. Another calculated move. I didn't move. "Fine." She took a deep breath, the kind someone takes before delivering a rehearsed speech. "I made a terrible mistake. What happened with Blake isn't what you think. He took advantage of me. I was vulnerable and he manipulated the situation. I know that doesn't excuse it, but you need to understand that I never meant to hurt you." I waited silently while she continued. Then she placed a hand on her stomach. "The baby, it's yours. From before everything happened. I'm due in 3 months, and I don't know what to do. Blake won't help me. My parents won't even talk to me. I'm alone and I'm scared. And I need you." Right on cue, the tears started falling. She was convincing. If I hadn't spent the past 6 months replaying every lie she'd ever told me, I might have fallen for it. "Prove it," I said. She looked up at me. "What?" "Prove the baby is mine." "I just told you. You told me a story. I want proof. DNA test." Her eyes widened. "You don't trust me?" No, the word hung there between us. She quickly shifted tactics. "Do you have any idea how expensive those tests are?" "I can't afford that." "I'll pay for it," I replied. "Prenatal paternity test. Non-invasive. You can get one done as early as 7 weeks. You're what now, 5 months? 6? That's plenty of time." "That's not the point," she said quickly. "The point," I cut in, "is that you showed up at my door 6 months pregnant asking for help, and you expect me to take your word for it after you slept with my brother in my own bed." She flinched, and for just a second I saw anger flash across her face before the sad expression returned. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I came here because I thought you were a good person, someone who would do the right thing. The right thing is a DNA test. And what if I say no? Then you walk away and we never speak again." She stared at me, clearly calculating her next move. The tears weren't working. The victim story wasn't landing. So she tried bargaining instead. "Okay, fine. But can we at least talk about this inside like adults?" "No." "Why are you being so cold?" "Because 6 months ago you destroyed my life. You don't get warmth or understanding anymore. You get exactly what you asked for. A DNA test to prove whether the baby is mine." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a business card I'd been carrying for the past 3 weeks. Yeah, I had already looked into this. Something told me this situation might come up eventually. "This is a clinic downtown," I said. "They do prenatal paternity tests. Call them, schedule the appointment, and text me the date and time. I'll meet you there. Until then, don't come back here." I held the card out to her. At first she just stared at it like it was something toxic. "Take it or leave it." She finally snatched it from my hand. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I replied. "But if I do, it'll be on my terms." Then I closed the door, locked it, and listened as she stood there for about 30 seconds before her footsteps slowly faded down the hallway. I went back to the couch, picked up my drink, and noticed my pulse was completely steady. No panic, no doubt. If the baby somehow turned out to be mine, I'd deal with it responsibly, child support, a custody arrangement, whatever was necessary, handled cleanly through legal channels with no relationship with her beyond basic co-parenting. But if the baby wasn't mine and my instincts told me it wasn't, then things were about to get interesting. I pulled out my phone and began researching lawyers, harassment laws, and what kind of documentation I might need. I took screenshots from the doorbell camera showing her at my door and backed everything up to the cloud. Then I opened my email to store it all. That's when I noticed a new message from Lauren with the subject line, "Appointment scheduled." I opened it and saw that she had already booked the test for the following Tuesday. The email included the clinic address and appointment time, everything written in a clean, professional tone. But at the bottom of the message header, buried in the metadata most people never bother to check, I noticed a CC line with Blake's old email address. The message had been recalled almost immediately, pulled back within seconds, but my email client had cached it before the recall went through. I just stared at the screen for a moment. They were coordinating this together. I didn't confront either of them or send a screenshot asking what kind of game they were playing. Instead, I quietly saved the email along with the metadata and backed it up in 3 different places. After that, I went back to researching and spent the rest of the night digging through old text messages from before the breakup. I found messages of Lauren complaining about Blake, messages from Blake asking me for money during the same week I caught them, and conversations where Lauren talked about our wedding plans. I captured screenshots of everything, sorted them by date, and built a timeline. By 3 in the morning, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence. I didn't know exactly what I'd use it for yet, but I knew I'd probably need it. The following week felt strangely long. Not because I was nervous, but because I was waiting, and patience like that takes effort when you're this angry. When Tuesday arrived, I met Lauren at the clinic. In the waiting room, she tried making small talk, asking how I'd been and whether work was going well. I ignored it and answered emails on my phone instead. Eventually, the technician called us back, polite and professional, asking routine medical questions. Lauren answered most of them while I simply provided my DNA sample with a quick cheek swab and confirmed my contact information. "The results should be ready in about a week," the technician said. "We'll send them by email and also mail a hard copy." I told her email would be fine. Lauren looked at me and asked, "Don't you want the official copy?" I shrugged and said email was official enough. As we walked out of the clinic, she tried again. "Look, I know this is awkward, but maybe we could grab coffee and talk about what happens next." I stopped and looked at her. "What happens next is we wait for the results," I said. "If the test shows I'm the father, my lawyer will contact you about arrangements. If it doesn't, you never contact me again." She blinked. "Your lawyer?" she asked, sounding surprised. "It doesn't have to be like that." "Yeah," I said. "It does." I walked to my car without looking back. The following week dragged by while I stuck to my normal routine, working, going to the gym, running errands. But every morning I checked my email first thing. Monday passed with nothing, then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday with still no results. Finally, early Saturday morning at 6:39, my phone buzzed with an email from the clinic. The subject line read, "Paternity test results." I was still in bed when I opened it on my phone, read the first line, then read it again, and a third time just to be sure. Probability of paternity, 0%. Not 15%, not 5%, not even 1%, 0. I set my phone down, stared at the ceiling, and took a long breath before smiling. The first feeling wasn't relief but vindication, that deep satisfaction that comes from knowing your instincts were right all along. I had suspected it the moment she appeared at my door, and the CC line with Blake's email had only reinforced that suspicion. Now I had proof. After that came the anger, cold and focused. They had tried to trap me, tried to manipulate me into fixing their problem. Lauren had gotten pregnant, probably by Blake, maybe by someone else, and when reality set in they decided I should be the solution, the stable one with the good job and clean reputation, the one they assumed would fall for the victim act. They believed I'd simply accept responsibility for a child that wasn't mine because that's what good men are supposed to do. I got out of bed, made a cup of coffee, opened my laptop, and created a new document. It wasn't a letter or an explanation. It was a plan. I made 3 columns: who needed to know, what they needed to see, and when it should be sent. The list quickly grew, starting with my parents, the same ones who defended Blake at Christmas and told me I was overreacting. The list kept growing. My parents, the ones who insisted I should work things out with Lauren. My sisters, who accused me of making everything about myself and tried to guilt me for walking away. Blake, obviously. The family group chat I had muted 6 months earlier but never officially left so they could all see it at once. Jessica, Blake's girlfriend of 8 months who had no idea any of this existed. Then extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone who had taken Blake's side or told me I was being too harsh. I opened a new PDF and kept it simple, professional, and emotionless. Page 1 contained the DNA test results with all names redacted except mine as the alleged father, and the 0% result clearly highlighted. Page 2 showed a clean timeline of events. December 19th, I discovered Lauren and Blake together. December 25th, my family defended them. December 26th, I cut off all contact. June 18th, Lauren appeared at my door claiming I was the father. June 25th, the DNA test was performed. July 1st, the results arrived. Page 3 included screenshots, old messages from before everything collapsed that proved the relationship and showed they knew exactly what they were doing. Page 4 contained just one short paragraph. 6 months ago, I cut contact with my family after discovering Blake and Lauren together in my home. Last week, Lauren appeared at my door claiming I was the father of her child. I requested a DNA test. The results are attached. This will be the last time I address this situation. Do not contact me. No accusations, no drama, just facts. I saved the PDF, opened a new email, added every address from my list, attached the file, and typed a simple subject line, "For your information." My cursor hovered over the send button. One click was all it would take, and every remaining bridge would burn. I thought about my parents, my sisters, all the family dinners, holidays, and birthdays that would disappear with that single action. Then I remembered Blake in my bed, my parents defending him, my sisters calling me cruel, and Lauren crying at my door asking for help with a baby that wasn't mine. I clicked send. Within 2 minutes, the read receipts started appearing on my screen like dominoes falling. The first reply came 4 minutes later from my younger sister. "What the heck is this?" 30 seconds after that, my older sister messaged, "Are you actually serious right now?" I didn't answer, just watched as my phone began ringing. First Mom, which I declined. Then Dad also declined. Then my older sister again. 6 minutes later, someone forwarded the email into the family group chat I had muted back in December. I unmuted it just to watch the chaos unfold. In 10 minutes, there were 47 messages. "Is this real? Someone call him. This has to be a mistake. Oh my God." At minute 12, my mom typed, "This has to be fake. Blake would never." My dad followed with, "Everyone calm down. We need to talk about this as a family." That was the only time I responded. I typed a single message into the group chat. "There is no family. Not anymore." Then I muted it again. Soon after, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it but answered anyway. "Is this real?" a woman's voice asked shakily. "Is Lauren really pregnant with Blake's baby?" It was Jessica, Blake's girlfriend. "According to the DNA test, it's not mine," I said. "You can figure out the rest." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "He told me they never. He said it was just one mistake and that he ended it." I replied quietly, "It wasn't one time and he didn't end it." There was silence for a moment before she whispered, "I'm so stupid." "No," I told her. "You trusted the wrong person. That's not the same thing." She asked if I had known about her. I said I hadn't known until a few weeks earlier and told her I was sorry she had to find out this way because she deserved better. I ended the call before she could say anything else. I felt bad, but I didn't have the emotional energy to deal with Blake's collateral damage. Moments later, Blake texted, "You piece of garbage. You just ruined everything." I looked at the message for a few seconds before replying, "I ruined nothing. You did this. Both of you did. I just stopped letting you make it my problem." Then I blocked his number. More calls and texts kept coming, and I ignored them all until someone started pounding on my door. I checked the peephole and saw both of my parents outside. My mother looked like she'd been crying, and my father looked furious. I didn't open the door. "Son, please," my father called through it. "We can fix this. Just let us in so we can talk." I turned off the TV while they kept knocking. Then my mother's voice came through the door, desperate. "Please, we didn't know. If we had known." "You knew enough," I said from the other side. "And you still chose him. Leave." They knocked for another 5 minutes before finally giving up and walking away. By the third hour after sending that email, I had more than 80 missed calls and over 150 messages. Cousins, aunts, uncles, even relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions. Some of them actually supported me, sending messages like, "Holy crap, good for you," and "They had this coming." To be honest, I never liked Blake anyway. "You did the right thing." But most of the messages weren't like that. Many people accused me of being cruel. "He's your brother. Family is supposed to forgive. You're tearing everyone apart over a mistake." Anyone who defended Blake got blocked immediately, while the supportive messages stayed unread but unblocked. Around midnight, Jessica texted me again. She said she had broken up with him and that he finally admitted everything. According to her, he confessed the baby was probably his but claimed he wasn't ready to deal with it, which is why Lauren had come to me instead. Apparently, he even described me as the backup plan. Jessica wrote that she couldn't believe she hadn't seen it earlier and apologized, adding that for what it was worth, she believed I did the right thing. I read the message twice. I didn't reply, but I didn't block her either. I sat alone in my apartment staring at my phone and thinking about the wreckage I had just caused. Surprisingly, I didn't feel guilt or regret, just exhaustion. Then another thought hit me. I was still living in the same city, still in an apartment only 20 minutes from my parents' house and 15 from Blake's place. They knew where I worked, where I lived, even where I bought groceries. I had burned every bridge, but I was still standing on the same side of the river as them. I opened my laptop and pulled up an email my boss had sent 3 weeks earlier, one I had ignored because I wasn't ready to think about it at the time. The subject line read, "Denver position, leadership opportunity." I remembered glancing at it briefly. It was a big promotion that required relocation, more money, more responsibility. At the time, I told myself I would consider it later. Now I clicked reply and typed, "I'd like to accept the position. How soon can I start?" My finger hovered over the send button for a second before I clicked it, closed the laptop, and went to bed without overthinking it. My boss replied at 6 the next morning. He was on the East Coast, 3 hours ahead. "We can have you here in 2 weeks. Housing stipend starts immediately. HR will send paperwork today. Welcome to the team." 2 weeks. That same morning, I gave notice on my apartment. The landlord didn't ask questions, and since it was month to month, the process was simple. I'd be out by the end of July. After that, I went straight to a phone store and got a new phone and a new number. Only 5 people received it: my boss, HR, my landlord, my bank, and my insurance company. No one else. I didn't post anything online or tell anyone about the move. I simply disappeared. Over the next few days, things went quiet. My old phone, the one I had stopped carrying, stayed on the kitchen counter buzzing occasionally. I checked it once a day just to see the fallout: more missed calls, more voicemails I never listened to, more texts I didn't open. Jessica sent me 2 updates, and I kept her number saved in my new phone. Not because we were friends, but because she was the only person giving me information about what was happening. Her first message came 3 days later. She said Blake had tried denying the baby was his until Lauren showed him the DNA test proving it wasn't mine. That still didn't prove it was his, so he demanded his own paternity test. Lauren agreed. The results came back the day before. A 99.97% match. He was officially the father, and Lauren was already talking to a lawyer about child support. I read the message, allowed myself a small smile, and didn't reply. 2 days later, Jessica sent another update saying Blake was falling apart. He had lost his job after calling in sick too many times and eventually just not showing up. His lease was about to expire and he couldn't afford to renew it, so he would likely be moving back in with my parents. She said she thought I'd want to know. I still didn't respond, but she was right, I did want to know. Around that time, my mother tried calling my workplace, only for the receptionist to tell her I no longer worked there, which was technically true since I had transferred. She panicked and tried emailing my old address, which bounced back. Then she posted in the family group chat. I unmuted it one last time just to watch. She wrote, "Does anyone have a way to reach him? We need to apologize. Please, someone must have his new number." My older sister responded, "Maybe he doesn't want to be reached." After that, the chat went silent. For the first time, it seemed like the reality had sunk in. I wasn't hiding or cooling off. I was actually gone. My younger sister eventually tracked down my social media account and sent a message saying she understood I was angry, but that cutting everyone off like this was extreme and that we were still family, that I couldn't just erase them. I logged in once, read the message, and immediately deactivated the account. During that week, I packed my apartment methodically with no nostalgia attached. Old photos with family went straight into the trash. Gifts from Lauren were donated to Goodwill. Anything tied to my previous life disappeared. Furniture that family had helped me move, books they had recommended, even the coffee maker my mom once bought me. Everything either got sold online or left out on the curb. In the end, I kept only 2 suitcases of clothes and 1 box with the essentials like documents, my laptop, and a few tools. Everything else was gone. By the 10th day, the apartment was almost completely empty, reduced to the bare essentials. A mattress on the floor, a few dishes, and a TV sitting on a folding table. I had already sold the couch, the bed frame, the dining table, nearly everything. Either it was going to the new place or it wasn't going anywhere at all. On my final night there, I ordered Chinese takeout and ate straight from the containers while sitting on the floor, watching a basketball game on my laptop. There was no music, no nostalgia, just silence and the echo of the empty room. Strangely, I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, but lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight for months without realizing it and had finally set it down. I slept deeply that night without any dreams. The next morning, moving day, I packed my car with everything I owned. 2 suitcases, 1 box, and my laptop bag. That was it. My entire life now fit inside a sedan. Before leaving, I looked around the apartment one last time. Empty walls, clean floors, no trace I had ever lived there. I locked the door, dropped the keys in the landlord's mailbox, got into the car, and started the engine. Just as I was about to pull away, my new phone buzzed. Only 5 people had that number, but the call showed as unknown. I should have ignored it and driven off, but something made me answer. "Yeah," I said. "Son." My father's voice came through, strained and raw. "Please don't hang up." I stayed silent. He continued, saying my mother was devastated and hadn't slept in a week, that Blake was a mess and moving back home, that the family was falling apart, and asked if we could just talk once. I sat there in the driver's seat with the engine running, the car packed, Denver 14 hours away, everything I had built for the past 2 weeks resting on whatever I said next. "Talk," I finally said. "You've got 2 minutes." My father took a breath, and I could hear traffic behind him. He must have stepped outside somewhere to make the call. He said he knew I was angry and that I had every right to be, but that they were trying to keep the family together and that Blake had made a mistake. Yet he was still my brother. He said they thought if everyone could calm down, things might be fixed. I cut him off. "Stop. You're not calling because you understand what you did. You're calling because the consequences are uncomfortable." He tried to argue, but I told him that wasn't true. I explained that he wasn't sorry for defending Blake. He was sorry everything blew up, that my mother wasn't crying because she missed family dinners, but because she realized she had chosen wrong. That Blake wasn't struggling because he'd learned anything, but because his actions finally caught up with him. I told my father he was only calling because people were asking questions and the family couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. He said that wasn't fair, and I told him nothing about the situation had been fair. Finding my brother in bed with my fiancée wasn't fair. Showing up at Christmas hoping for support and being blamed wasn't fair. and having Lauren show up pregnant trying to push Blake's child onto me definitely wasn't fair. He went quiet. I reminded him that every time he had a choice, he chose Blake. He told me they were trying to protect both of us, but I said no, they were protecting him. I didn't need protection, I needed my family to stand behind me, and they didn't. After a long pause, he asked what happened now, if I was really going to disappear and never speak to them again. I told him yes, that was exactly what I was going to do. He said that wasn't who I was anymore, and I told him he didn't know who I was now and hadn't known for 6 months. When he tried asking me to think about it, I told him I had been thinking about it the entire time, when they defended Blake at Christmas, when Lauren showed up pregnant, when I sent them the DNA results, and right then while he was talking to me. My answer hadn't changed. We were done. Before he could say anything else, I told him to lose the number, stop looking for me, and not ask around because I was gone. Then I hung up, blocked the number, switched off the phone, and tossed it onto the passenger seat. I put the car in drive and left. The trip to Denver took about 14 hours. I stopped twice for gas and coffee, once somewhere in Kansas and again in eastern Colorado when the mountains first appeared on the horizon. At one point near Omaha, I pulled over and slept in the car because I was too exhausted to keep driving. I woke up at dawn, grabbed more coffee, and kept going. Somewhere around the 10th hour, crossing into Colorado, I realized I was smiling. Not because I had won or gotten revenge, but because for the first time in months I felt like I was moving toward something instead of just running away from the past. Denver felt clean and structured with mountains rising in the distance, and the new job was demanding with long hours and a steep learning curve. But I welcomed the challenge because it kept my mind focused on building something new. Guys, we're getting really close to reaching 1,000 subscribers on this channel. So if you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so because it really helps us reach that milestone. And thank you for supporting this journey.